Holy shit, Dennis Leary just introduced me on the biggest stage I've ever been on.
Next time, give it loud everybody for Anthony Eugenio. We're gonna have next time. Very funny. Wayne Russell, everybody.
Welcome to the Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne podcast.
Why, hello, everybody, and welcome to an Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne. And I'm back from the bowels of hell, everybody. I've been sick as hell, but I'm back in action. And I'm here with, this might be jarring for people because Wayne always looks like he's either freshly saved from the wild dog and then shaved to look like a presentable dog. And he's in between those two things. And right now he's presentable dog. How you doing, Wayne?
Good. Yeah, I was going for the big toe look.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. And and today we have a special guest, and who, she's been all over the world doing stand-up. The Cam Neely Foundation does Comics Come Home. She's done that. Wayne, you'll know. Do you know who Cam Neely is, Wayne? You actually would know this. You do? What is his best role that he's ever had besides being the enforcer for the Bruins? You know the answer to this?
Yeah, he was Seabass, wasn't he?
He was Seabass! Oh, my God. Carolyn, I'm really butchering your intro here, but it is important to know that I've done 200 movie references in the history of this podcast, and Wayne has done zero of them. So I was really excited because this is one I knew he would know. Anyways, welcome, Carolyn Plummer. How you doing, Carolyn?
I'm good, doing well.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course, yeah. I'm excited. I don't sound like it, but I am excited.
Well, I wanted to tell the people that I know, of course, Comics Come Home, big credit, all that stuff. But your biggest credit to date, I've looked up everything, has been being the headliner at the inaugural Open Mic Pain production show. Right, Wayne? Remember that?
Yeah, Loudon, New Hampshire. By the way, Dennis, I don't remember talking to Dennis there at the campground up in Loudon. He said hello. I work with him, and I told him I was chatting
Was
with
Dennis the one that took us on the golf cart?
He was.
Yeah, he's super
I told him
nice.
we were chatting tonight. He's like, oh, my God, say hi.
That was a great show. That was one of my best shows of the year.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's I'm going to put that on the webpage, actually. As a quote.
Exactly. OMB Production, one of the best shows I've seen in the last couple months. Probably pretty good. No, we were pumped. So we got Wayne had a coworker who reached out, and we do shows for a couple headliners in the area, and we use a PA system to help them out. So we kind of put out there into the ether that we could do shows. And someone at Wayne's work asked us to do a campground. They were like, "You think you can get a good headliner?" And we both, you were our first choice. We both said,
Oh, awesome.
we just saw Carolyn Plummer. You opened for Mike Katrobis at his special, and that's where we first saw you in the wild. And I remember me and Wayne sitting next to each other, and during your set, we turned over, like, where the fuck has she been? Because we've been doing it for a year.
That's what a lot of people say. Who are you? I'm used to that.
Yeah, I get it, too. Usually the bad direction, though. They're like, who the hell is this guy? Jesus Christ.
You know, it's funny. So I just moved to Pepperell, like I said, a couple years ago, and in the Common Ground Park area near my house, there's a sandwich board. I don't know how old it is, but I think it was for like a Rotary Club or something, or I don't know what it was, but it was for a comedy show, and you're on that sandwich board.
That's hilarious.
There. Yeah.
It's just there permanently?
It's just there. Yeah, it's like nobody wanted to take the effort to move it, bringing it out of the rain. So
it's the only thing that has literally ever happened in that town. So they leave it up there. Like, look, we did a thing.
Yeah. Every time I walk by it, I just kind of look at it and nod a little bit. So, yeah.
Well, we have to thank you too, because Wayne seeing that board with your name on it was the reason why. So we've been putting on some shows now as we go, and Wayne is like, we should do it in a small town. People like going to shows in a small town. And I call him a fucking idiot every time he says that. I'm like, we should go to Boston. That's where there are people. And anyways, he'll always say, well, Carolyn did Pepperell, and I bet they did good there. So anyways, we did a show because of that in Westford, where the hell's that? And Wayne was, again, the reason why we went there. He was so sure of it. I told him he was surely going to fail. And he sold it basically out. I know we could have fit more, but that, in my heart, I like to call it a sellout. So thanks again for that. All right, first question though. We're gonna stop. I'm gonna stop getting so excited.
It's the sign it generates.
It does. So Open Mic Pain. We made the show that because when we first started, our goal here was when we interviewed people that they would be far better than us, and that they would tell us what their open mic experience was like so we can kind of compare it to ours. And then when we started doing it, we ended up just interviewing other open mic comics, and that was kind of not interesting. So we're really pumped to have somebody who can give us that perspective. So what got you started in the game, and what were the open mics that got you to where you are?
Well, I took a class with Dave McLaughlin. I was waiting tables. I had just graduated from college, and I was waiting tables in my hometown of Wolfboro, New Hampshire. So I was making a ton of money, and I saw this ad in the paper for a class, and I had Wednesdays off all summer long, and it was on a Tuesday, and I happened to have Tuesday off when it started, and it was some guy doing a class in his mother's condo's basement, which seemed safe to me. So I called him, and he seemed cool, so I took the class. And he's fine. He doesn't do comedy anymore, but at the end of the comedy class, you got to perform, and I met George Ham from Maine. I don't know if you guys know George Ham. He used to open for Marley all the time, for Bob Marley, and he started inviting me up to the open mic at the Comedy Connection in Portland, and I was living in New Hampshire at the time. So I took the class. The guy who taught the class gave me a bunch of phone numbers, because this is before, like, internet. Like, there was internet, but not, like, for signing up and stuff. So he gave me a bunch of phone numbers for open mic nights, and I started doing that. And then I did a contest in New Hampshire called the Lakes Region Laugh Off, and I ended up winning that contest with this other guy, Brian something. Brian doesn't do comedy anymore. And then I just started going to, like, Dick Doherty's open mics and the Comedy Connection in Portland, and the Comedy Connection in Boston that was in Faneuil Hall, and then signing up for, like, Nick's Comedy Stop. And this was all pre-bringer stuff, too, so I missed that part, which was fantastic. So you don't have to bring, like, 4 people or anything. You could just sign up, but you'd sign up, like, months in advance and then just wait to have your spot. So you're doing comedy, like, 3 times a month.
Wow. Now, was this early 2000s or 90s, or where were we at?
Late 90s. Very late 90s, early 2000s.
Got it. So, yeah, well, we had Steve Bjork on, and he was telling us of a time a little bit before this when he was in the scene, and he said the uniqueness to, like, once you got established in the scene at the time, the uniqueness was that you can, as an opener, make a living in the Boston scene, because you could do, like, 25 shows a night. Did you get past that big splurge? Was the scene down at that moment, or were you still able to do that?
It wasn't what he started before I did, like, a little bit, so it was, like, really on the, like, the end of, like, the heyday of the Boston comedy scene. And there were tons of, like, when I was first starting, it was, you know, it was sort of on a slight decline. Although there were rooms everywhere. Like, I never worked at Grill 93 at that, because I was signed up to do it and then they closed. And, like, it was before the Aku Aku, like, that was gone when I started. And, you know, Play It Again Sam's. Like, all those places weren't up anymore. So I missed some of that, and he started right at the end of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was an incredible time, because I know that there was a huge crash at some point, but the before and after of, I guess the best way to look at, for me at least, the scene-wise, was it was like the Louis C.K. era all the way up to, like, the Patrice O'Neill era, like that there was a probably 10-year jump inside of there.
Yeah.
Seems to be the golden era. And then after that, obviously, Dane Cook and all those people came through, and they were going. So I imagine you were, so Bill Burr and Bobby Kelly, were they still in the area when you were doing that, or had they left?
Bill Burr was in New York. Robert Kelly was still around. He had a full head of hair.
I heard he was handsome, yeah.
He was. He was like the hot comic. All the girl comics are like, oh my God, he's so hot. Dane Cook was still here, and then he left for LA. So it was like all those guys, and then Robert Kelly moved to New York. Patrice I missed. I never met Patrice, which bums me out, because I think we would have hung out.
Yeah, John Tobin told us all about him. I guess they spent a lot of time together, and the stories are endless. Even ones I've never heard before, which you think you'd heard them all, but yeah, that guy was an animal.
So, like, Dane Cook was coming back, and selling out the Comedy Connection in Faneuil Hall when I was doing open mic nights.
Oh my God, that's such a good time.
It was
That's awesome.
unbelievable.
Yeah,
But
David Cross too, then, right? Because David Cross and him were close.
I think so. I didn't really know him. I knew of him because I was friends with Butch Bradley, and he was part of the improv group that they were in.
So, what time in that era did you start getting on stage? Again, bring up Steve Bjork, this guy, because he's kind of like Gandalf. Every bit of advice I have usually gets back to him somehow. You said that he doesn't consider you really being a stand-up until you can be in the stage in the moment. He's like, that's when stand-up really starts, where you can kind of get out of the tunnel vision and feel comfortable up there. Do you remember what era and time, how long you were in it, and when that started to click for you?
I was very uncomfortable on stage for a long time. And I used to shake. I was really nervous. I don't know why. I just was.
Wayne's a shaker, that's for sure.
Yeah, my hand would shake and my leg would shake, so I'd wear baggy pants. But when I moved to Portland, so I lived in Manchester after I graduated from college for a few years, and then I had the opportunity to move to Portland, and I was driving up there a lot anyway. So I lived there for 6 years, so I really got comfortable at the Comedy Connection because I opened for Bob Marley a lot there, and I met all the Boston comics because they would come up and work, like Kevin Knox, Tony V, Ken Rogerson. So then that was like my home club, so I felt comfortable on stage after being there for a few years. But it took me a long time to be able to actually look at the audience and like get comfortable with silence. Like Bob Marley taught me that. He goes, "Why are you talking when they're silent?" And because I would like get nervous that they weren't laughing, and he goes, "That means you have their full attention." And I was like, "Oh."
That's incredible.
A big learning experience because I was filling that space in because I was nervous that they weren't listening when I had their full attention. So that was a big learning moment for me.
Yeah, that is a huge one for all of us. I remember Christine Hurley really hammered that into our heads one night just by action. I was watching her do navigation, and she had more laughs during pauses than I had laughs by a lot. And she would you would think the joke is over, and she'd give you an extra, 5 seconds of pausing and staring and just sitting in the silence. And she would roll more laughter into it. And again, it was an incredible thing to see. But yeah, what do you got, Wayne? Talk too much.
No, I look at where we are now and the people we're working with, such as yourself and Steve, and all that advice we're getting. And you were coming up at such an awesome time with all those guys as well. But it's incredible how many people I see these days not taking the time to go out to shows or meet people such as yourself and learn from the old guard, so to say. You know what I mean?
That was. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
That was one of the things. Like when I lived in Portland, I would go down and watch the comics from Boston, and just go to these shows because I didn't have to pay or anything, and I'd go have a few beers and I'd just watch these guys like Don Gavin and Tony V and Ken Rogerson, Kevin Knox. They're all different styles, and I would just go, God, I wish I could be like that. And I'd learn from just watching them, and I don't see a lot of people doing that anymore. Like the new guard that's coming up, like you said, they want to move up too fast, number one. And you move up naturally if you get better and you get consistent. And that's what I tell new people that I like. I'm like, you got to be consistent. Like if you're not making people laugh every time you're on stage, why would a booker book you?
I just had that conversation. I don't know if do you know Dante the comic? I can't even pronounce his last name. But do you know Dante the comic from
Rusiolelli? I think that's what
Rusiolelli? There
No,
you go.
I don't know any Rusolellis.
So you have to dance while you say it. It's the only way. Rusiolelli.
He's a very tenured comic from L.A. He was on Comic View on BET and all that stuff. I was talking to him last week, and we were talking about competitions and stuff, and how he's seen so many people fail competitions because they try to do all new material every step of the way. But he said, bookers just want to see that you're not just catching lightning in a bottle. They want to see the consistency and the fact that you can get the laughs consistently with the same jokes and say it, maybe not the same way, but at least improve upon it or work it so it's consistently funny.
Yeah, exactly.
And you
that's
only
the
get
other
that from
thing,
reps.
no. I used to work with a kid. He's out in LA now. I'm not going to say his name, but he every time he did his act, it was this exact same tone, the exact same cadence, like everything was the same. And every audience is different. The energy in the room is different. If you don't take that into account, I feel like you're a used car salesman. You're just giving your pitch every time. You're not taking that extra step to read the room or play off something someone said, or like someone has a weird laugh and you don't acknowledge it and you just do your act. Like you can do that, but I feel like that's like one dimensional. You're not doing the whole job. You're only doing half of it.
A good example of that, and kind of being in the moment was the show that we did in Loudon. You have this joke about a moth going in your mouth during
Oh
the
yeah.
show,
It's not,
and during
it's
that
just a traumatic experience.
well, during that show in the spotlight, you could see a moth coming in, and it was like way later, and you took the time. You're like, "Oh my god, a moth!" And I think that might have been one of the biggest laughs of the night.
Yeah.
Just your ability to be in the moment, notice that, and be like, "Oh shit, call back!" Like right now, that's perfect.
That was hilarious too. I gotta say, because I wasn't there the night in Loudon. I don't know if they told you, because Steve Sweeney did a thing and I got to open for him, which was awesome / horrible, because he opened for himself technically and blew the room up and then called me up and then made fun of me afterwards. So
Yep. I've seen him do that.
classic Steve. Classic Steve. But anyways, the next day I was in not Swansea. I was in some vineyard in the middle of nowhere. I forgot where I was. It wasn't Frog Brewing. It was another one. That was a vineyard. And anyways, they were like, "Hey, do you know Carolyn Plummer?" When I got there, I was like, "I do. She's great." They're like, "Yeah, she ate a moth here."
Oh yeah, that's I did the last show of the season there, and I wasn't going to tell that story. And there was a moth, so I flinched, and then I had to tell the story. And there were some people in the audience, and I was going to the China Blossom afterwards. I was doubled up. Not to brag, but I had to get going. I literally had just enough time to get to the show. Because Katrobas, of course, says, "Oh, you have plenty of time." No, I have just enough time. So
Just literally enough. I know that run. That's a tough one.
and these people were like, "We were here when you swallowed them off." I was like, "Great." That's why you came back.
So what did it taste
that
like?
Oh, it was dust. It didn't taste like anything, but the dust went in my
Oh my
throat,
God.
and I started choking.
Can't be worse
awful.
than the buffet at Wicked Funny. It was a good appetizer for that.
It was the worst.
Oh man, that's a gross. So, but anyways, that is what we want to eat, moths. That's the only reason why me and Wayne are in this fucking game, is to eventually get up there. We could do that and survive. Like right now, if a moth went in my throat, I'm like, and I would continue my joke. I'd have nothing to go on. I'd be like, "You guys didn't see that," but you're right. You do have to stay in the moment.
Everyone saw it, and then Pat Collins Googled. I'm like, I'm gonna die of some horrible moth dust disease, and Pat Collins Googled it, and he was like, "No, you're up. You're gonna be fine." I'm like, I'm never gonna be fine, ever.
I wouldn't believe Pat for a fucking second if he said that.
We've heard about your phone, Pat.
So how many years in do you think it was when you started getting booked regularly? Started. How many years were you doing open mics and then getting onto opening and guest spots and all that?
Well, here's the thing. So when I came up, Dick Doherty had a slave program where you could stack chairs and take tickets at the door and get stage time. So I did that for a while until I said, yeah, I want to get paid. I don't even know how many years I did that, but I ran a room for him up in the Lakes region where I'm from until I told him off one night because there was a problem. And then
Not to interrupt, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, and Jacques would be very upset with me if I didn't ask. Did you get any dick bucks?
Oh, yeah, I had dick bucks. I didn't get paid in dick bucks. I always got money. But like the sign, like when you're setting up, it's like, don't forget the dick heads, which always made me laugh. And they had this fucked up sheet, like for the money. And it was like ass backwards. It was like trying to solve a math problem, like 2 trains leave a station. I'm like, this is backwards. Like, the money would be right, but to fill it in their sheet didn't make any sense. So I did that for a long time, and then I got sick of stacking the chairs, and they agreed that I should move up, and then he would middle me with a weak headliner, and then I said, yeah, that's not going to happen. You need to headline me. Because I used to never stick up for myself, and then I got to the point where I was like, I can walk away from this. So I can say no. But he was good to me for a long time. I mean, he fucked a lot of people over. He has a mixed reputation, but he gave me a ton of stage time when I started, and I'm always going to be grateful for that.
Yeah, me and Wayne are definitely, that's how you know we're not even close to anywhere near there, because we're at Abuse Us stage, for sure. Like, we will stack some chairs. Like, we're like, holy shit, it only costs stacking chairs to do the show?
But it was great. Every weekend I was on stage when I went from, 3 times a month signing up for open mic nights, so it was great. And I got to meet all the comics. Like, I met Paul D'Angelo at the Chase House, which is now Longboards. They remodeled it, but they did comedy upstairs, and I remember seeing Paul D'Angelo for the first time. And I was like, this guy's fucking fantastic. So, and then once you start doing the open mic nights and you get better, other comics see you and they book you for shows. So it's like, as long as you're consistent and you get better, you'll get work. But you have to be professional, you have to show up on time, and you can't be a dick or a diva.
Yeah, we do get asked probably once a week, either at open mics or at shows or by anything. All newer comics coming up ask the same thing. How do you get booked? And you are 100% right, where it just happens when you're more consistent. If you go every week, and you'll start impressing the people at the open mics, which will then, somebody in there is going to have a show. Even if you're at a smaller open mic, they run things. And then once you get, like, if you have 20 solid minutes, people are going to realize who you are. That's how it starts, and you're going to start getting bookings. And then, obviously when you have a solid headlining, you go up from there. So I don't know if there's when you first start comedy, you're like, it's a maze of a language you can't even speak to figure out how to get into it. And really the answer is just do it. If you keep doing it, it will happen, or you're that bad. Sometimes you got to tell people that. You're like, never gonna happen for you.
Yeah. That's the moment where you go, maybe I should have picked a different profession.
Yeah. Say that all the time. That's another thing. I'm sure, again, when you know you're a good comic is when you don't. I'm sure everybody has those thoughts, but more the thoughts of, like, when you're going up there, you're more confident it's going to go well. We're still, deer hunter in the woods flipping the revolver with a bullet in it. We have no idea how our sets are going to go.
Feeling. I think
really?
I have that feeling. Yeah, I think George Burns said it best. He said, if you're not nervous when you're performing, then you're not on your game. And I'm always nervous until I get a laugh and I can kind of feel out the audience and see if I can connect with them. Like, I just did a show in Providence on Saturday, and the guy in the middle did a ton of crowd work, and that's his thing. That's what he does. And then I was like, I don't even know if they're going to want to listen to me. And it was, at the beginning, I had to feel them out. They were all different ages, and it ended up being fine, but it was work at the beginning.
I did a gig in England a couple weeks ago in London, and I was, like, really nervous before I went there that they weren't going to understand my references or wasn't going to connect with them and all that stuff. And I was right. They hated me, Carolyn. The guy, the host who brought me up, the MC there, he went up and did 10 minutes of just straight crowd work to every person in the crowd. He's like, "What's your name? Where are you from? What do you do?" And then did that to everyone, and then brought me up, and I started doing jokes, and they were like, "What the fuck is this?" And they were pissed.
You left out the part where he didn't do good crowd work. It was, "What do you do?" "I'm a doctor."
Yeah.
Okay. What do you do?
Yeah, he did do that.
The other thing, like, I do material. Like, I can do crowd work, but if I'm in the middle, I'm not going to do crowd work because that's not fair to the headliner. And if I'm opening, I'm certainly not going to do crowd work. I might get a little bit of crowd work to get them going, but I'm not just going to ask people questions. Anybody can do that. But it's hard to kind of get them settled back in after someone does crowd work because now they want to talk to you. And with all the crowd work that's out on the internet, it's like even worse. Now, I was helping you. I don't want your help. If
Yes,
I
yes,
wanted
no.
your help, I'd have a fucking puppet and I'd be a ventriloquist.
No, we do notice that a lot now, and I think a great sweet spot that me and Wayne are at is that we're opening and hosting a lot. So you really learn, especially when you got to host like 50 shows in a row. You're like, all right, how good this goes for me does not matter. That's not what it's here for. You're really here to get people to understand the show, to understand hearing jokes, get the energy up for the first act that goes up, and just keep the momentum rolling. Where I feel like a lot of time when you first start hosting, you're like, this is my show for the week. I want this to go well. So you do anything you can to grab on. I mean, that's what people do crowd work when they're hosting, and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think hosting is a lost art now because people don't really do it.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate because the host is someone that, like, if a controversial comic goes up and, like, alienates the whole crowd, they got to get them back. And they got to know how to do that. And they've got to get the energy back, like you said. And people don't think of it. It's partially, I think partially it's the whole internet mentality. Me. It's all about me. That's definitely changed. It doesn't feel like you're in the trenches sometimes with the other comics. You kind of feel like you're on your own. When it used to be more, or like everybody leaves and now you're by yourself closing out the show and you're like, all right, I'll just be up here trying to make sure I don't fuck this up, but I don't have any comrades with me anymore, you know?
No, I 100% feel you there.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot. That was one of the big things that bugged me when we first started, was going to open mics, and you'd sit there and you'd watch all the comics go up. And then when you were up, all those comics that went up were outside smoking weed or doing something, and you're telling jokes to like 3 people, and you sat there and watched everybody like, yeah, I'm going to be part of the group. And there's no group when you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it when there's a group of headliners and they're all like have other gigs throughout in the city, and so you're not hanging out with people because like they're going to another spot here or another spot there. But a lot of the time they're just like dramatically selfish, and that's why we're doing it to each other.
Exactly.
Which I can feel. I can feel that for sure.
Yeah. The open mic nights that I did at the Comedy Connection Faneuil Hall in particular, they'd get an audience. It wouldn't just be comics. The comics would be in the back. So that was actually a great way to come up too. But every once in a while you'd be like, why is this crowd not laughing? And then you found out afterwards that they were from Germany and half of them didn't speak English. So you didn't know till after the show, and you're like trying your hardest. It was like I couldn't get them to laugh, and they didn't even. They would just sell tickets to anybody that bought them. So you're like, oh, that's why they weren't laughing. They didn't speak English.
Wow. Yeah, we had to. So for our first year, borderline year, me and Wayne started like the same week, and every single time we'd go on stage, we'd only say our jokes to other comedians who did not want to hear it. And then it's like we walked out of the woods into a valley when we did our first show. We're like, holy shit, there are people who want to hear jokes out there. Like, we almost have no idea.
And comics are so judgy.
They are, and that's the sad part about it too. Like something I wish I could go back when we first started and tell us would be, I didn't mute my phone, would be that comics aren't necessarily going to laugh at what you're saying, and I cringe about some of the things that I might have said that I think might end up being good ideas that I just threw away because the 3 comics listening didn't laugh.
Yep.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I went into I have the joke book for the whole time I've been doing it, and I had like 45 minutes of jokes, and I would do 7 minutes of them because I'm like, can't say any of those things. And I started recently, because I've been doing real shows, going back and looking at some of the jokes and trying them. And I was really surprised at the amount of them that I got that worked, that I'd only tried once at an open mic, and someone flipped me off and said, fuck you. And I was like, well, don't do that again. There's a lot of that. I'm going back, though. You need it. I really feel like the shit that you eat at an open mic is healthy for you as you go forward. Because Katrobis took me to Connecticut. I've said this a couple times, but it's burned in my memory forever. And he made me go up first, and a style show where it's just a opener, middle mic. and they were getting their drink orders and ordering food during my entire set. And I realized that that's impossible. There's literally nothing you can do there if everybody's going to order food and drinks while you're going. And they hated me, obviously. But I was able to... I've been doing the same set for like a month at that point of not changing anything. Everything was working. I was doing really well. And that was the set that made me realize that, like, hey, you need attention grabbers in the beginning of your set for that type of environment to try to get people into you. So I moved some stuff around, and my set got 10 times better from it. So I learned a lot more from that shit eating than I did, just going up and having a good set.
You learn way more from the gigs that you eat it on than the ones that you do well on.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. We talked about this too, but with also with Katroba. So I see a theme here.
Yeah, he likes to watch us eat shit. That's for sure. It's so funny, unapologetically too. He's like, "You're gonna do horrible here. Good luck."
That's encouraging.
But yeah, we talked about it before. We did a show. Actually, Anthony and I both did a show with Katrobus and Bjork, and the crowd wasn't having Mike in the beginning, wasn't having me, and I let it get to me. Like I kind of just shut down. And like you said,
what happened after, Wayne? Wayne, what happened after?
You did okay, but Steve...
I fucking crushed.
I wouldn't say crushed. I wouldn't say crushed.
In comparison to you, I did, definitely.
Well, yeah. Anybody would have crushed in comparison to what I did.
That's true.
But that was a huge learning experience for me, because one thing Steve said to us was, if you have a room of whatever, 100 people and 2 people are laughing, perform for those 2 people. They're enjoying you.
It's good advice.
He's a crazy motherfucker. He's done a couple things that I'm like, holy shit. Like, he did a show once where there wasn't a lot of people, and he put the mic back in the stand, and he just talked to them. Crushed. And then at this one, they were really hard to deal with, and there was a dance floor in the beginning that they didn't let us put chairs on because they didn't want to scratch the dance floor, of course.
Oh, yeah, and it's always a shitty dance floor.
Always the worst dance floor. Yeah, so we had like a Moses parting of the seas thing with the crowd on both sides. And Steve just walked in the center of the dance floor and stood on and got off the stage and got out of the spotlight. And again, obviously crushed. I've never... He's definitely at the point... I keep bragging about Steve because I love him. So, but man, I've never seen someone so adaptable in the moment where he's like, oh, I know what to do. I've seen this before. Here's how you connect with them. Like, he has like a perfect connecting sphere. Like, I don't know how he gets,
That's from years of experience.
Ugh, so good. Never think of it.
I did a show once when I was in Maine. It was just me. And it was a Zumba-thon. And I was the comedian that was going to go on. And the schedule was all screwed up. This lady kept pushing me back. And then she finally brings me up and the food shows up. These people have been Zumba.
Oh, my God.
They've been doing Zumba since like 7 a.m. So everyone left the room. Except for like 3 kids and 4 adults. And I'm like, I had to do like 45 minutes. And I was like, fucking kill me now, right? So I did the show, and like this kid was like, I think you're very funny. I said, oh, thanks. What are you, like 10? And I cried on the way home. I mean, I got my money, but I cried on the way home. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It was horrible. Like, everyone left the room except for 7 people. It was the worst.
Oh, yeah, I did one in Old Orchard Beach, and they there was nobody in the room. There was like 2 people. And I was like, man, this can't get any worse. And then right before my set came up, like 6 8-year-olds came in. And sat with their parents in the front, and I looked at the promoter, and I was like, listen, I don't know, 8 months into comedy at this point. I'm like, the foundation of my comedy house is built with dick jokes. Like, that's all I got. And the guy was like, send it. And I looked right into those kids' faces and did 15 minutes of dick jokes. I'll never forget that. I cried after that, too. They cried, I cried, it was the whole thing.
I did a show, and the kids were supposed to watch a movie because it was like a whole weekend. And the guy who booked the show was there, and he goes, yeah, the kids are going to watch a movie, so no problem. He goes, you're not really dirty anyway, but some of your stuff's adult themed. I'm like, yeah. And then the guy who hired him invited the kids to stay for the comedy show. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? So then I spent before I went up, there was other people in the show, and before I went up, I just tortured the guy that booked it. I said, "So I can do my mammogram joke, right?" He goes, "Please don't do that joke. There's kids," and he kept just cutting my time. He goes, "Why don't you just do 15 minutes instead of a half?" I go, "Oh, I think this joke will be fine." He was like, "Will you stop?" So I ended up getting paid to do like a half hour, and I only do like 15 minutes.
I unfortunately did that to poor Bill Simus. You know Bill, Funny for Funds.
I know Bill, yeah.
Yeah, so I was doing a show with him, and I was really nervous because it was the first one I did, and I'm like, so it was a benefit, and I'm like, so what can I say? He said, just be you, you'll be fine. And I showed him my joke list. He was like, oh, you shouldn't do a lot of that. He was right, by the way. There's like 250 people there. I'm like, doesn't matter, Bill. They're just a crowd. A crowd's a crowd. Benefit crowds are different. You have to learn how to work those too, because you
and
can
know
take
what
the air out
the
of the room.
benefit is for. I've seen
That's true.
people tell a joke, and I'm like, they're like, why aren't they laughing? People always laugh at that. I'm like, because it's a cancer benefit, and you're talking about cancer. Idiot.
Yeah, we actually had a conversation about that with Jacques Lambert because he was doing a cancer benefit and he had a cancer joke about cookies. Wasn't that what it was, Wayne, or something like that?
No, I think it was for diabetic children, and it was I think
And it was a cookie joke. Yeah,
it was a cookie joke.
that's tough. You can't wipe cookies off the table as a premise because you go to see diabetics. How do you work with them? That's tough.
No, would you gotta ask. Like, I did a benefit the other night for someone, and I cut out part of my joke because they had lost their home in a fire, and it was to raise money for them so that they can find another place to live or whatever. And in one of my jokes, I go, I learned very early that when you catch on fire, you stop, drop, and roll. I was like, I'm just going to leave that out.
Yeah, that's
I don't
what you
know
learn.
if she was there or not, but I wasn't. You got to be sensitive to some things.
I feel like that whole stop, drop, and roll thing. I feel like that's just going to happen regardless.
Right.
No, but a lot of people stay up as long as like you'd be really surprised how long they run for, Wayne. You got to stay in the same spot.
I don't run when I'm not on fire. If I catch on fire, I'm just fucking done.
That's the first time I see you run. Exactly, you'd be surprised. You'd be running doing that Naruto run or whatever the hell they call it with those kids out there on
Yeah,
fire.
trying to get to that Area 51.
I caught on fire in college.
Did you?
Oh, did you roll?
No, because my friend put my shoulder out. I leaned into an open flame. I burned my neck, and my flannel went up. My flannel went up in flames.
The fire catch up on you there?
Yeah. Story for another day.
Hey, well, if it happened now, you'd know how to adapt because you're a pro.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. Me and Wayne are not, and that's our issue now. When I had those kids in front of me, I didn't take anything out of the joke. I remember specifically because it's a really hard joke to explain and not sound weird, but I swear to God it's funny. Where I have a joke about getting a prostitute in Lawrence who wasn't a woman, it turns out, and in the end we compromised and she comes on my tits. That's the whole. It's funny, I promise, the whole thing, but that's what the joke is. And I said it just like that to the kids because it's all I had. And I think nowadays I would know not to do that. And you would say, shouldn't you always know not to do that? And you really don't in the beginning.
Well, part
Like
of
you
you,
just direct.
I don't know about you, but part of me is kind of like, what the fuck? Why did you bring kids to a comedy show? And I know that in the past I've done jokes I know are inappropriate because somebody brought their kid. Like, I did a show once in Concord, and this guy introduced me to his kid, and he goes, "Oh, JJ's been to a bunch of shows." I'm like, "How old is JJ?" He's 10. He's been to Upright Citizens Brigade. I go, "That's totally different." And he goes, "You don't have to hold back." So I was like, "All right." So I didn't hold back, and the rest of the audience was uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
sex in front of a 10-year-old.
That's true. I never thought about that.
We did. I went to the 19 Carter open mic that Mike runs in Berlin Monday, and there was a gentleman. I guess it was his birthday, and his wife didn't want him to go alone, but they were babysitting their grandkid who was 6 years old, and she brought him. So we had to tell her, like, "Hey, this isn't just any comedy. This is open mic comedy. Like, nobody here is vetted. Me, and I'm trying out some new stuff." And she was like, "It's fine. Don't worry about it." I mean, the kid was great. I'll say he was a very well-behaved child. but I definitely got some hell points that night.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
probably
no.
wasn't even listening. Is he on an iPad?
He's probably iPadding it.
No, he was no. They had like board games or something there that he was playing. He was very
Yeah,
intent,
he
but I'm sure
wasn't.
still subconsciously it's in there, and he's gonna go to school and talk about all the crazy shit that I mentioned, and they're gonna be like, "Where'd you hear that?"
This
That's
is
a good point, though. Sorry, go ahead, Carol.
no. Go ahead.
Well, this is such a bad tangent to go ahead into, but you remember Bird Box with Sandra Bullock? Did you guys ever see that movie?
I didn't watch it to be honest, but I saw the ads for it.
Is
It's a
that the one with
shit
the
movie.
blindfold?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyways, she's trying to drag these two stupid kids around the whole movie, and she's got to put blind, and they're obviously being a nuisance the whole time, and they should be dead because the idea is you take off the blindfold and monsters rip your face off, or that was the whole premise of the movie. They never showed the monster, so what the hell's the point? But anyways, no iPads. The whole movie for her to give to the kids to look at the stupid iPad. They would never ever look up from the iPad. The movie would be over. There'd be no tension in it. She makes them blindfold themselves. Like if it doesn't, you can have a 308-year-old at a comedy show front and center. If you give them iPads, you could say whatever you want. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. I can kill the rest of the family as long as one of them's got an iPad. They're not going to do anything.
It's so
I don't know. I talked to my son, looking in his eyes, and he still looks at me and goes, "What'd you say?" So I don't think you need an iPad. I think they just don't care what adults have to say.
I did a show once at a church, and it wasn't for the church. It was a benefit for somebody who was sick with some sort of disease, and they just happened to do it at the church. And I was told PG-13, and I asked 3 times, and just double checked. And when I was done, I was in the lobby of the church. And the other part that was uncomfortable is they did the show right on the pulpit next to the baptismal thing, and people were sitting in the pews, and that's just not a great vibe for comedy. So after I was done, I was in the lobby, and the minister's wife came up to me and she goes, "Can I talk to you?" I was like, "I guess so." I'm like, "Why is she so mad?" And she's like, "You did a joke about masturbation." I go, "No, I didn't. I don't even have a joke about masturbation. That was the other guy." And she goes, "Well, you were talking about hooking up, and my granddaughter's in there. It was supposed to be G." I go, "I was told PG-13. I go, "You're not talking to the right person. If you're upset, talk to the guy that booked the show." And then I go outside because now I'm pissed because I just got ripped a new asshole for something I didn't do. And the minister's outside with a suction cup taking down comedy night from the sign outside. And then I just started laughing. I was like, "This is one of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen."
Sometimes in my case, it's your fault. Like, for instance, I did a benefit, and the lady came up to me afterwards. She's like, "Hey, you got my son high." And I did. And I didn't know I didn't know at the time that he was I don't think the benefit was for him. I don't know how to say this, but like he could have a benefit done onto him. The best way I can describe it. I didn't realize it. And I got this kid blasted outside. I did my set. I did pretty good. Yeah. And she was running the show.
Oh,
So yeah, sometimes it's your fault.
this one wasn't. I'm like, I'm not taking the heat for this. I did what I was told to do.
That's going to be. Do you vet shows now? Like when somebody says, "Hey, why don't you do the show?" Do you vet it and figure out, like, "Hey, that's I'm good. I don't want to go to a
Oh
church
yeah.
again."
Yeah, like I ask a lot of questions. Are there going to be kids there? What is your definition of clean if they want a clean show? Because everybody's definition is different. Does that just mean no F-bombs? Does that mean no swearing? Does that mean content? Because I've gotten burned in the past. And if it sounds like something I don't want to do, I just say no thank you. Because I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I remember it was when we first started getting offers to to do like opening sets or like showcase shows or whatever. I got asked to go to this place in Quincy, and I was told it was a clean show, like not like like you could still be a little dirty, but like no gratuitous like f-bombs, no gratuitous sex talk or whatever. And I don't really have like a super ton of gratuitous stuff, but there was a couple things I was doing at the time, and Anthony probably remembers for like 2 or 3 weeks ahead of that, I was trying to figure out like, okay, is it oral sex or is it blowjob? Like, what is the right way to say this? And I spent 3 weeks trying to clean up.
Fellatio.
Yeah, fellatio. Yeah, and I went through like every scenario in my head, and then when we got there, they're like, "Oh no, you can say whatever you want." I was like, "Cool."
Oh,
It's funny that you say that your stuff wasn't overly grotesque because it was the most grotesque things in the entire world. You remember your this?
Not what I was doing that night.
You had 2 minutes on the there's a the Pompeii masturbator who is somebody who I guess they caught in the Mount Vesuvius Pompeii. You know, everybody's kind of flashed in time there, and one guy I guess was just beaten off, and it was in the news. And Wayne had it had to be like what 3 minutes of you talking about that guy.
When I first did it at an open mic, it was long. It was long-winded. But the idea
And that's the kind of stuff Wayne did there. He's like, it wasn't overly grotesque. I was just talking about a guy covered in lava and cum.
No, and I still love that joke. So the idea behind that joke was like being scared about nuclear war, but channeling my spirit animal, which was the Pompeii masturbator. So he knew he was fucked. He's like, I'm done. What can I possibly do? Oh, I'm just gonna beat off one last time. And one
That's not overly grotesque, right?
I mean, at least he went out doing something he liked.
Yeah. So one of the cool things about nuclear bombs is nuclear shadows. So they'll like vaporize somebody and it'll leave like a shadowy imprint behind. So it's like if a bomb goes off and I see the mushroom cloud, I can just start going to town and just kind of angle the shadow so I'm a little more endowed than I am.
Yeah, he did that for the first 20 times Wayne did that joke. Wayne's really the biggest part of him trying to nail the joke. He was like, I really got to figure out how to get the shadow of the dick I try to produce to cascade behind me. And so, like, the first 20 times he's like, yeah, you guys know nuclear shadow? And he's just, like, holding the mic to try to look like a penis. No one knows what he's doing.
Well, we all check hats on when we're learning.
Yeah, well, we sure do. And he went straight clean after that for a while, which was crazy to see. Wayne, because another booker, Radigan, you know Radigan, he had a show that Wayne could have got on, but he needed 5 clean minutes, and again, Pompeii masturbator era. So he was like, nope, don't got that. But then afterwards, he's like, I have to have clean minutes. And so he did a couple shows afterwards with like 10, 15 minutes of clean. And it was jarring. So jarring to see that. I still can't. Because I know the true Wayne. I know the darkness in him. And he's like, how about gasoline?
I mean, I think that was some of the best advice I got was you know, right clean because you can always dirty it up, right?
Oh, yeah, and you can get booked on so many more things if you can work clean. Like, if you're struggling to have 15 minutes of clean material, you need to look at your set and say, what am I talking about?
Mm-hmm. I'm finding a lot now. My son is, like, going through this, like, I'll say mental growth spurt, where he's becoming more human than he was before. And the stuff that he's saying and doing is, like, a gold mine of just funny, you know, and I think that's probably going to be relatable. It's just a matter of, you know, I started off writing these like about these weird ideas and premises and like crazy ideas that I had, and just trying to take those funny things that happen and figure out how to make it funny when you say it without sounding long-winded. I think that's the key. Where do you get?
Eddie Murphy said it once. Do you remember when Eddie Murphy talked about when he first doing stand-up, and he said the only thing you know when you first start doing stand-up is how to shit and fart. So that's all you talk about. He's like, you know, when you first start out, it's your life experiences. You're good at shitting and farting. And which, by the way, he then did a couple of fart jokes, and it was the best. So I was like, man, that's nowhere near the type of fart jokes I was doing. But you know, I think it takes a good while to be able to find a way to construct a joke clean, not because that's not your style, but more it's harder to write a clean joke. You know, it's really easy to just you go out there with, again, grotesqueness as the punchline, because that could be a lot of things. Where a good clean joke is usually based on cleverness more than anything else. But we're getting close to the end, and I want to so we've gotten you all the way now up to the point where I want to ask, like, you did this whole career. I don't want to say it culminated in Comics Come Home, but that is such a huge fucking thing. What was it like getting that and doing that? What was the process of, we all dream of that.
Well, I got a text and it said, "Can you send a video? I want to submit you to Comics Come Home." And it was in the middle of the pandemic when I wasn't feeling funny or creative. And I was like, "Are you fucking with me?" And they said, "No, I want to send it to Dennis Leary." And I was like, "Fuck." So then I looked at all my clips and I was like, all my clips are shit, because that's how you feel. So I sent the 2 clips that had the best sound that I thought was a good representation of some of my jokes. And he came back, he texted me, which I lost when I got a new phone, but he texted me back directly and he said, "I really love your style. I love your timing. He said, Cam and I would like to invite you to do Comics Come Home." And it was Comics Come Home 26, and it was the first one back after the pandemic. And I don't know if you remember, they canceled Comics Come Home 26 and took another year off. So I got it. They canceled it when I was already on the bill. And then I had to wait another year. And it was sort of like, well, they want to do a big show, so I don't know if they're going to put you on. They may bump you, blah, blah, blah. And then I got invited back again. So, I shit my pants twice. And then I get invited. I have 10 minutes. I practice my set for 2 months. I put in the jokes that Dennis said he liked because I was like, obviously I'm going to do those jokes. That's how I got this gig. And it was probably my best night in comedy, but I was watching Dennis and Jimmy Fallon sang a song about New York versus Boston at the beginning, and they have a full band with like a horn section, and I'm just standing there watching on the side of the stage, and Bobby Kelly came up to me, he goes, "Plummer, are you first?" And I said, "Yep." He goes, "You're on the wrong side of the stage." I go, and they drove us into the garden. So they put you up at a hotel and they drive you over there. But we drove into the garden. So my dressing room, I had a dressing room with Sam J, and it was next to an 18-wheeler. Like, you're in the bowels of the garden. Like, I didn't know how to get to the other side of the stage. So he started walking me, and then my handler, Elizabeth, said, "I was looking for you." I'm like, "I'm 100 feet away from my dressing room. You didn't look very hard." So she walks me around, and now I have 10 seconds, and they're like, "You're up. Sign those jerseys," because they auction off all this stuff from Comics Come Home for the foundation. So I had like 10 seconds, and I walked up. They handed me a microphone. I walked up on stage. I forgot my entire set. The set that I've practiced for 2 months is gone out of my head. Because I'm like, holy shit, Dennis Leary just introduced me on the biggest stage I've ever been on. So I walked out. I have no knowledge of what I'm going to do. And I say, "Hello, Boston." Fucking stupid. The place erupts, and it calmed me down. And I was like, okay, this is going to be fun. So then I just started on my set. I wasn't rushing. I left one joke out. So I did 9 minutes and 40 seconds, but no big deal. And then Dennis Leary outroed me, and he said, "Holy shit, Carolyn Plummer, everybody." And then I walked down the stairs on wobbly legs, and Jimmy Fallon and Tuukka Rask were there. And Jimmy Fallon fist bumped me. And Tuukka Rask was like, I can't do his accent, but he was like, "Very good job." And
He's like, "I am a fucking liability in the playoffs." Sorry.
Yeah. But we had been in the press room together. They make you do press, and I was like, I kept trying to sneak out of the room because I was like, nobody wants pictures of me. And then this woman would yell at me, "Carolyn Plummer, get the fuck back in there. We want pictures of everybody." And I was like, I just don't like being in the spotlight like that. It sounds weird to say, but it's like a million pictures, and everybody's asking you questions, and I'm like next to Jimmy Fallon and Tuukka Rask in this lineup, and Lenny was there, which was great because I've known Lenny forever. But at one point I said, "It's hot as balls in here," and I didn't realize how loud I said it. Everybody heard me. So then they're all like, "It is hot as balls in here." And I was like, oh, fuck, why did I say that? But I could not have asked for a better set. Like, my set, it was like it was weird. Because there's a million fucking people there. I forget my set, and then this, like, calmness came over me. And I just said in my head, I go, you're set. You've practiced it for 2 months. And it came out perfectly. And the timing was right. And I did really well. Like, better than I thought I was going to do. And then there's an after party. And, I met all these cool people. I met John Mulaney and Jimmy Fallon and Cam Neely and Cam Neely's wife, who was wearing like some tiny dress that you could see through, and she hugged me, and I was like, "This is weird." But it was probably like if I never do anything else in comedy, that was probably the biggest and the best thing I've ever done. I would love to do it
sounds
again.
incredible.
It
Now,
was
was the timing different than like I hear, and by on podcast, not in person, because nobody who'd ever done this would ever talk to me. But they say that the like you have to kind of let your pauses even longer than normal in a stadium because they have to roll the laughs back to you or something like that. Did you notice that, and did that trip you up at all, or did you do your set how you've been practicing?
It didn't trip me up because I was in this weird like place where everything just it felt like slow motion almost, and like I was in the moment, but I was like in a very good place comedy wise. I don't know. It just and then like when you hear the laughter, it like comes over you in a wave. Like when I left the stage, I was shaking from adrenaline, and I almost fell down the stairs, which is typical for me that I usually hurt myself. But then I had like a 20-minute conversation with Jimmy Fallon because he vacations in Wolfboro where I grew up, and he couldn't believe that I was on the stage at the Boston Garden at Comics Come Home, and I was from Wolfboro. So he's like asking me all this stuff about Wolfboro. He's like, I go, yeah, I was born there at Huggins Hospital. He goes, get the fuck out. You're from Wolfboro? I go, yeah, I grew up there. I lived there. And he was like, so you go to the Yum Yum shop? I go, yeah, my friends used to work there. And he goes, get out of here. And then he talked to me like about all this stuff in Wolfboro, and he was like the nicest guy.
Damn, I was really hoping he'd be a huge dickhead because I mean,
He's not.
come on, he's like the nicest
And
guy
he's a
ever.
lot taller than you think he would be. He doesn't look tall on. He's very tall with giant feet.
I thought he was like
I-
4'5".
No, but you know how some people look tall? He doesn't look tall.
No,
On
I
TV,
honestly thought he was
he is.
super short.
He's not.
Now Conan's huge. I know that. I saw one of my favorite rock bands once on Conan, and I knew them because they were local to here. And I was like, oh, I'm the height of all of them. And you've seen me in person, Carolyn. I'm small. And when Conan went out to shake their hands, they looked like little hobbits next to him. I was like, damn, he's a fucking monster, that guy.
Yeah, he's tall.
But damn,
But the other thing that was cool is I got there early. They drive you over, and you're in the bowels of the garden. And Lenny and his brother took me on stage and showed me like where all the cameras were going to be and gave me a lay of the land. So I got to have that moment where it wasn't the first time I was walking out on the stage, and I think that helped too. And then Mike Hanley got the best picture of me with all the jumbotrons behind me. I'm like tiny. I look like an ant, and there's all these jumbotrons, like pictures behind me. And he said if I wasn't in the cheap seats, I wouldn't have been able to get such a great picture.
oh, that's incredible, man. All right, Wayne, we're getting towards the end. Wayne's always got last ditch questions. What do you got, buddy?
So I have two. You mentioned when you first went on stage and you forgot your set. You said "Hello Boston" or "What's up Boston" or something like that.
Yeah.
So we've gotten many tips from many people, and I've also heard tips. I watch a lot of different things online and stuff. I get like 50-50 on when someone goes on stage, whether they should say, hey, what's up to the crowd, or just go right into it. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's better to like say, hey, what's going on, everybody, or something like that? Or do you think it's better to just go straight in?
I think it depends on what happened before you. Like on Saturday, when the guy did crowd work, I did it's a crutch. I said, I'm the high energy portion of the show. I come up to whip you guys into a frenzy, and then I go on my way just to get them used to the fact that I was going to do material and I wasn't going to do crowd work.
Mm-hmm.
Other times I've said, like when I was growing my hair, I'm still growing my hair out, but when I was really growing my hair out and it looked like shit, I said I would say I had this joke about how I had to grow my hair out because women wanted to buy me drinks. But now that it's longer, I go, I'm growing my hair out. This is what it did today. And then I add something like I was at Sam Adams on Thursday, and I said I didn't know I was going to have Sam Adams haircut when I got in here. And then sometimes I say I'm just glad I'm through the No Country for Old Men stage because that was a long month, and I just break the ice. I try not to say how you doing. That's why it was weird that that's what came out of my mouth. I was like, fuck.
I do notice that I'm very big, and I can't stop myself from saying keep it rolling for your host or whatever while I'm taking the mic stand and moving it, because I don't want there to be any silence there. And I do want to be able to... Casey Crawford, I'm sure you know, for instance, is I like him a lot because he starts his shows off the same way every time, where it doesn't matter how much energy you bring him up with, he's going to let it completely die down before he starts.
Yeah.
You know, he does that whole pause, lean to the mic thing and all that. And that's such an uncomfortable feeling for me. But I've been trying to... Because I just want to, like, if the host gives me good energy, I'm like, fuck, thank you. And I want to keep it there forever, the whole set, so I can keep riding it. Because I think maybe when you're more middling or headlining, you get used to the idea of you can manufacture the energy and bring it up yourself. Or, like you said, if you want to start off by saying you're the higher energy portion of it, probably good to give a pause in the beginning to make the energy a little bit lower, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, all things that we're so bad at now, I'm trying to get better at.
I always try to have a joke that gets a laugh right out of the gate so that I can... I mean, I used to open with something else. I don't always do that joke, and it was that joke every time. I got the laugh, and then I went on to the next thing.
Yeah, great way to gauge the audience, definitely. I got one where I say I like weed more than I want this show to go well. That's kind of the idea of that's why I'm high up here. And I always, like, if that joke doesn't hit, I'm like, this is going to be horrible. And if the joke hits good, I'm like, this is going to be good. But like you said, it becomes crutchy because you're like, this is the only way I can know how it's going to go or how my energy is going to be.
Right. I'm okay with a crutch.
Gotta have it.
So my second question for you
Yep.
was, coming up or growing up, did you have any comics that you looked up to or were inspiration for you to grab a mic for the first time and start telling jokes?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I'm the third child of a congregational minister, so there's already some humor there with Sunday school and all that crap. And then we used to watch Carol Burnett and Tim Conway and that show, and that was a real inspiration. And then as I got older, I started watching Saturday Night Live, and I watched it when like David Spade was on there, and you know, Eddie Murphy when I was younger, and then Chris Farley was like, the first time I saw Chris Farley, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's hilarious. So when I would get drunk in college, I would do impressions, and one of them was Farley. And I would like fall and do shit like that. And so stupid. But one of my friends who was really encouraging goes, you should do stand-up. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. And he was like, because we had a couple stand-ups come to Plymouth State when I was there, and he was like, this guy's awful, you're funnier than him. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And that's why I ended up taking the class, because I didn't know how to be a stand-up comic. But I always wanted to be a stand-up comic. And I liked Ellen. I thought she was really funny because I told stories. I used to watch Steve Sweeney on Evening at the Improv. I watched that show all the time. And then I saw Kevin Meaney for the first time. And that was when it clicked, where I was like, you can talk about your family. Because he always talked about the tight pants and all that stuff. Because I was like, what do you talk about for jokes? You know, like, I'm not Eddie Murphy. I'm not Richard Pryor. I loved Robin Williams and his energy because I was the exact opposite. But I was like, I had no idea what to talk about. And then when I saw Kevin Meaney, I was like, okay, so you can take everyday stuff and make it funny. And that's where it sort of clicked. And I was like, I think I want to do this. And I did a lot of theater when I was a kid. And I always liked that, but it's different. I liked being the center of attention. And I always was kind of a smart ass. I got in trouble a lot in school. So it was like a natural progression, really.
Damn.
That, so.
Incredible. Yeah, I learned Is a pretty recent thing, actually, because I felt for a lot of the time that I wrote, I had a hard time getting writer's block a lot, because I like, I don't have a clever topic to talk about here. How am I going to get into it? And then I opened for Robbie Prince.
I love Robbie Prince.
A couple months ago now, I opened for him, and if you know Robbie, you probably know his closer, the dog and cats bit. Mm-hmm. And I remember afterward, because it was the best closer I've ever seen anybody do live. He absolutely dominated the room with it. It was just a step up of energy I've never seen before. But anyways, I remember telling Wayne, I'm like, if I told you I had a premise about cats being lame, dogs being cool, you tell me to go fuck myself. Like, you'd be like, yeah, there's nothing there. That's as simple as it gets for it. And he mined just such unique creativeness out of it. Yeah, I realize you can talk about anything. You know, you just got to have your spin on it. And that happens naturally.
Yeah, that's... Kevin Meaney was when it clicked for me. And I got to work with him, and he was, like, the nicest guy. So I was bummed when he died.
Wow, I heard he was a really tough guy to work for when for other people said, but wow, it's cool to see he was nice.
He and I got along, but I also had a coded message from Ken Rogerson to give to him because they used to be roommates. So I said, they used to play these two characters, and they were warlocks when they were high. So I had a message for him. So he and I clicked right away.
Oh, good.
Even though the booker told him that I was like his biggest fan, I'm like, great, now he thinks I'm the lady from Misery. Yeah. But he and I had a great time together.
Oh man, that's all. Yeah, no, he was with obviously the Sweeney and Meanie show. Were they doing that when you started out? Still, was that going around? They had that for a while.
No, he was in New York when I started. I remember when he came out on The Tonight Show, though, and he sang the song, and that was hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Damn. Amazing. All right, so we're at the end here. Anything you want to plug before we get off this sucker?
When is this going to go up?
It'll go out Monday.
Monday. So we're next week. I never know.
That's okay. While you look it up, I'll explain it because I say it every time. We record before, and then we put it out on Monday. So we're in the future right now as we're talking because this is live. So it is technically Monday today, but it's the past. We're not going to tell you what day, people, but it's the past sometime. And
yeah, I'm at Samuel Slater's on Friday the 22nd in Webster, Mass. And then somewhere else the next day. Oh,
damn,
and then
schedule on an iPad. We write our schedules on the back of our hands.
I used to have a book, like a planner, and now I just keep it on my phone.
Hell yeah. Google Calendar, that's what we use now. It is a lifesaver.
Yeah, that's because if I have to make sure I put it, if I put it in events, it goes right to my website. But if I put it in my personal calendar, it does not go to my website. So if I have a dentist appointment or something, I have to make sure I put it in the right place.
Do you mess that up
on the website?
Do you mess that up? Like
I have in the
puts up the
past.
super
Yes.
person. Yeah.
I'm opening for Laughing Gas on Tuesday. All right, what's your website, Carolyn, for people to check out those dates?
It's carolynplummer.com.
All right, everybody. So make sure you check out the website. Carolyn's all over the place. And remember that don't remember anything. Just give up on life. Bye!
Like, I'm going to die of some horrible moth dust disease, and Pat Collins Googled it, and he was like, no, you're out. You're going to be fine. I'm like, I'm never going to be fine.